Brett Ferris, great, good to have him back.
Yeah, he's been out for a while, and a long time coming. So yeah, he hasn't had much training for a while. You know, he's missed most of pre-season, but he's got enough running under his belt so he can take to the field. But he's not the finished article yet. He'll need to get fitter, but he's available to play.
The Easter weekend, it's an interesting weekend for him to come back. Presumably, he won't play 2 matches. I might be assuming something that might not be correct there, but
we never say never.
Absolutely. But the Easter weekend as well, I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? You've got 2 games in short succession. Having played last weekend, I know it's the weekend after Easter that a lot of coaches say that is the one that's awkward.
But it's just the amount of training that you do or you don't do, and it's each year's got its own different story. So we know what we did last year, but you know, it's different this year. We're doing something different this year. And what we did last year was different to the year previous. It's just about where your squad's at, how much running the squad's done, how much running they need, who's injured. And I think this time last year we were relatively healthy. This year we've got a load of injuries, well, I had a load. So so what you do with them, you just got it. You're constantly monitoring it. So you know, Brett Ferris will play Friday. You're right. I think the likelihood that he'll back up and play Monday is highly unlikely, but at the same time, you've got to make where we come out of the game first. You know, and well, we've got to see who picks up a knock and who can and can't, who's can and can't play. And I said this last year that the quarter of players that can train on a Monday after a Friday game for us is becoming less and less. And I don't think I've got too many soft blokes in my team. I don't think it's softness. I just think it's wise and it's smart that they don't train. And some of them, you know, a lot of them can and do train on the Monday. Normally a tough day after the Friday game. But the number of players that we're being advised that he doesn't run today, and if he doesn't run today, he's going to be available for Friday, the following Friday. But if you run him today, he's going to flare things up. So that's our usual routine, and that number would be in double figures. Out of a 30-man squad, that number of players that don't train on a Monday would be in double figures. So if you can't train on Monday, and it's advised not to train on Monday, imagine a group that's got to play on Monday. So it is an interesting period.
Have you heard that anecdotally or otherwise from other clubs as well, that they're being advised the same thing? Is it just that the game has just got so intense now, so brutal?
I said this last year as well, that I figured his second name, and I should remember his second name. It's rude of me not to be able to do, but the offensive coordinator from Seattle Seahawks came and visited us last year, and you know, it was a really, really interesting period what we spent with him, and just one of the things that their strength and conditioning coach, a fellow who's well known to rugby league, Dean Riddle, who's spent time with a few Premiership football clubs and rugby league clubs, is that he said we contact training and, you know, really arduous training 3 days after the game is pretty much a no-no anymore. It's you know, in rugby league we often talk about that 48-hour period where you don't push players straight after the day after the game's crazy. You know, 2 days after a game it's unwise to push them. And then what they were saying in the NFL, from their point of view, is that 3 days after the game, they're wary of what they do with them. So, and we're finding that. You know, we're not copying that, and we're not forcing that. We're finding now that, you know, 72 hours after a very arduous physical game, that there's better and smarter things to do with them than take them on the field.
So the Easter weekend is I think I may have asked you this last year as well, that the Easter weekend, coaches must almost dread it because it must be almost impossible to get ready for Monday.
No, I don't dread it. Because well, I'll mention this because it's factual. You know, they're not my opinion. They're just facts. But the Easter weekend is a significant weekend on our rugby league calendar, and it's there. And I said to my players, don't whinge about it, don't moan about it. And I'm not making any sort of a judgment on the Easter weekend. I'm just telling you factually what players can and can't do. But it's there. Your attitude towards Easter is significant. It's a big part. You've got to get it right. And you know, the marketing people at the RFL will be able to tell you whether it's worth doing or not. They'll be able to tell you, and I'm being serious, whether the crowds are up, whether there's a serious turnover of revenue because of the Easter weekend. And if that's the case, I understand we're an entertainment sport. I'm just letting you know from an athlete-centred point of view.
You mentioned there, you said you had a lot of players who were injured. Have you got some more coming back?
Yes, Stevie Ward could be available Monday, and Liam Sutcliffe could be available Monday. Surprisingly, Jimmy Kainos might be available Monday as well. So, you know, we've got three grafters there, three blokes who get through a lot of work for us, and three blokes who have got some fresh legs about them. So that'll be a welcome return.
Brad Day's Twitter account this week tweeted that he was joining Leeds Rhinos. Is there anything to say on that?
Not from my point of view.
Can we move on to the opposition then? Were you surprised at the events of earlier in the week at the Giants with Rick Stone losing his job?
I don't know. I haven't been following. I won't make a comment. I don't know.
Was the time to feel sorry for him then? Because I mean, you're a small bunch of people, really, rugby league head coaches. There are only so many jobs available. Do you have a look around and think, oh, it's a shame for him, or otherwise?
Nobody cares about me.
I think you'd be surprised.
No, they don't. Opposition coaches don't care whether I get the sack or not. I don't care what they say. Opposition coaches put their head on the pillow at night time and they don't think, oh, I hope Brian Mack saves his job. They don't care about me. Now, you know, if you're asking me, do I show some compassion to a bloke who's unemployed? Of course, yeah. Am I surprised? I'm not bothered. You know, I don't really care too much about what goes on at Huddersfield. If that sounds disrespectful, it doesn't. I don't mean it to be, but I don't care what goes on at Huddersfield. My job's big enough as it is, and I'm notorious for not knowing what's going on in the game. I don't have a social media. I don't read newspapers, or news websites. So, you know, I hope the bloke's all right, and I hope he finds himself some employment.
Does it make it difficult playing them? A, because they've got a new coach, and that new coach may bring a couple of new things to the team that you haven't seen otherwise this season in there? Yeah,
I asked my staff this morning. It's a good question, that. I said, do you think they're more dangerous now, or do you think they would be more dangerous with Rick Stone in charge? And the smart response, I think, came from the analyst, James Bledsoe, was, I think they'd be more dangerous when the new coach comes in. I think whatever they've got going good will still be there for them, Huddersfield. Whatever is not so good for them will still be there. I know Chris Foreman's taken the reins over. You know, he's not going to be able to overhaul how they play within 48 hours. But they may well, you know, put a bit more effort in for the bloke if he's a popular fellow, which, as I understand, he's popular within the playing ranks there. So I'm sure we'll be facing a very enthusiastic Huddersfield.
Do you understand why players do that? Because quite often it happens, doesn't it? They sort of get a lift. Do you think it's just been a sort of grind under the previous regime, whoever that is, not specifically Huddersfield, and that grind, the gloom is lifted a little bit and it sort of lets them play a bit more freely?
I don't know, there's two ways of viewing it, isn't there? One of them would be that you can be very resentful and bitter of players who you know, just everything about them has just got apathy towards everything, you know, and all of a sudden a new coach comes in. I think he's just a completely different player. And I get why some coaches would be resentful. That's not my point of view. My point of view would be then it's the coach's responsibility to make sure that you're not boring, that you're not just churning out the same stuff to the players. And if the player looks like he's tired, and looks like he's bored, looks like he's disinterested in what you're doing, well, either he's the wrong player and he shouldn't be there, or you're giving him the wrong messages. So I've always thought, what would a new coach come and do if he took over my job? I'm always thinking that. If I lost my job, what would a new coach do? What would he think that needs changing dramatically? What would he see that's poor? And, you know, I don't walk around, you know, jumpy about losing my job, but I do always think, how fresh could this team be? What's the next innovation? What's the one that would keep them interested? Playing 30 games a year, you know, you know, I know it might sound glamorous. It's bloody hard to churn out 30 game plans a year, 30 offensive game plans, 30 defensive game plans, and a real easy way of dealing with that is just to keep the same system every single week and just tailor it. Well, that becomes extremely boring for players. And just, you know, within every working week, you've got 2 or 3 days training to get through as well. So 30 times 3 at least is 150 training sessions, not counting in playoffs and grand finals and Challenge Cups. You know, a fair old few training sessions there that if you just do the same thing every single time, it becomes unbelievably boring. But then you cannot pinball, and you can't say, well, this week is going to look like this over here, and then this week is going to look like this. It's a really hard balance to strike, and that's without talking about stimulating players' minds as well and keeping players interested. So it's a crazy job, and when players start to show apathy, I think it's because of a number of things. I don't think it's just because the players' fault, and absolutely it's not just the coach's fault as well.
Finally for me, they've conceded 15 tries I think in the last 2 matches now, Huddersfield. You won't want to give them any hope at all. They've scored early in both of those games as well and sort of been in the game for 10-15 minutes, but if you won't be wanting your players to give them any kind of hope, presumably.
We won't be facing that Huddersfield. You know, the Huddersfield that's just conceded 15 tries in the last 2 games. We won't be playing that Huddersfield. We never do. For the last 7 years, we've faced an Huddersfield that would go down the list and say, right, we've got Leeds, and it's almost like they can't see the 2 games previous. We've got Leeds, right, we're having them. And that's just how it is. I say that about most teams.
I was going to say you'd probably get that for a lot of teams because of the status of.
Well, Wigan don't do that. Saints don't do that. But there's some other teams, you know, that they've got their own. You know, everyone wants to get them as well. You know, I don't think Hull do that. I think teams go for Hull as well. But there's quite a number of teams. You know, especially the West Yorkshire side. We've got a lot of derbies in West Yorkshire. That would just. I'm not at all suggesting that they pay lip service to the previous 2 games, but it's almost like they don't have enough focus on them knowing we're coming up. And, you know, playoff standard games usually most weeks for us against teams like Huddersfield, who have just conceded 15 tries in the last 2 games. We won't be facing that Huddersfield.
Brian, just to take you back to last week and Cass, obviously the game.
Do we have to?
Have a lot. Try and keep it brief. Speaking to a couple of the players on Monday, they were still, even after I think you had the review in the morning, at a loss to explain that kind of first 16 minutes. Now that you've managed to reflect a little bit this week, what was your take on what happened in those first 16 minutes that you say really did cost you the game in the end?
Number of things. It's never black and white, is it? It's never just one answer. I'll still go with it. I still think Castleford were awarded field position and repeat sets off some questionable calls, which, you know, it doesn't help. Those things don't help. But I'll quickly add, you know, you've talked to me enough. Our responsibility is to deal with that. But if every single time we play, that we get pinged, Callum Watkins shoulder charge. You know, these things came in. The shoulder charge came in because of some players were coming from 3rd man out with no intention to make a tackle at all, and just hit the bloke from the side, almost to a car crash type collision where he couldn't see, and whiplash was going to be a big part of it, you know. So, you know, one of the ways of dealing with this, said, right, you've got to make an attempt at a tackle. And somewhere along the lines, that's got the tackles that are attempted from front on, where a bloke hits you with the shoulder but he doesn't put his arms around you, that got dragged in there as well, as if that was illegal. That was never the intention to start with. You know, what Callum Watkins did was just straight on man, try to tackle him, got it wrong. You know, it was the clunkiest tackle I've ever seen, and Callum actually fell backwards and nearly tripped himself over. I just thought it was just a very misguided type of penalty. And then maybe we need to start tape recording what gets said in coaches' meetings, where the referees are in the meetings with us, and it's agreed that defending wingers can go up and challenge for the ball, and on the way up, and certainly on the way down, if they haven't got the ball, they can manage the offensive winger to the ground. It's ridiculous to suggest that a defending winger can't make contact with the offensive or the team who's got possession of the ball, that he can't make contact with him while challenging for the ball. Why is the offensive winger protected? Why is he a protected species? Yet the defensive winger has got to get out of the way completely. So you either catch it clean by that rationale. What Tom Briscoe was penalised for on Friday by that rationale, Tom Briscoe either goes up for the ball and catches it clean. Yet if he doesn't catch it clean in the process, he bumps the offensive winger, it's automatic penalty. Why is the offensive wingers afforded so much room? And listen, if Tommy Briscoe made no attempt to catch and just barged into the offensive winger, I get it, understand it. It's obstruction, he's taking him off the ball with no attempt to catch it. But Tommy Briscoe got out jumped. What, has he just got to let the bloke land and just get out of the way and then decide to become a defender? It's ridiculous. So we agreed in the coaches' meeting that if that's the case, you could manage the bloke to ground. If in the process of managing that tackle to ground, you were too aggressive and it looked like too much of a genuine tackle where you're bumping the bloke, well then it's a penalty. So, and also on top of that, we weren't great. I didn't think we were awful, but we weren't great. And on top of that, I thought Castleford were really good. Give them credit, I thought they were really good. They came out of the blocks again and played really well. So I think for 12 and a half, I think it was 13 and a half minutes that I thought we were off and the game wasn't going our way. On 13 and a half minutes, we had an offensive set where we made half a break. Joel Moon went half through, and Richie Marler supported him, but he never got the ball. And I remember thinking in the game, and I remain the same now after review, thinking that that was ballsy, that, to try and attack with as much width and with as much, to chance it as much as we did after such an adverse start. Most teams would shut down and keep possession and just, try and get the cycle going their way type of thing. And from there, I thought we were great. We conceded another try, a clunky try on our try line, but you're going to get those. We have to live with those. But I thought we were great for the final 65 minutes of the game. I thought we were outstanding.
Absolutely, yeah. And when you've spoken today about the physical element of the next couple of games, in terms of players' mentality, obviously off the back of what happened against Cass, poor start, almost nearly a great comeback towards the end, and then going into these two games very close together, what's it going to take for those players to recover mentally from what happened against Cass at Ellen Road and then be ready for the challenge of going
well, they recovered. That's, I think, the point I'd like. They recovered on the field, so they'd be hacked off with the first 15 minutes. That still resonates with them, and it probably will all season. We'll always look back to that first 15 minutes. I think why, but they recovered on the field. They got it. They turned it around. I thought they were buoyant when we were coming off the field. They were buoyant at half time, and then we went out at half time and scored another couple of tries, and 3 tries I think we scored after half time. I'm not sure, and kept Castleford scoreless. That is a recovery. That's a good recovery, and finished the game in great form. And weirdly, another disappointing loss to Castleford, but weirdly we finished with momentum. We've had a decent week's training.
I know that you've spoken about the challenges of going to Huddersfield. Obviously not a huge amount of joy for you there over the years. Why do you think that is? Because I know that you like to control things yourself and say that we're responsible for our own destiny. Why do you think that you've had certain issues against them?
Because they get up for the game.
More than your players?
No, not more than our players. No, our players get up for every game, but they get up for the game and have some exceptional performances against us. And history tells you that they don't get up for the games. They either do make playoffs and don't follow through with it, or don't make playoffs. So I'm not going to lay the blame at our players for it. Our players, I've told you, play very intense, very high tempo, very fast-paced games every single week. That's what we're used to doing. And sometimes we're at the races, sometimes we're not. Just that's how it is. Huddersfield don't, yet they do when they play Leeds. So you better ask them that question.
And last one, I know that many people would say we're still early on in the Super League season, but with 4 points at stake, very close to each other. How crucial is the Easter period for you in the season of Super League now, and particularly for where you are at the moment?
Yeah, listen, I think just take Easter on its own. I think it's a challenge for us, and it's we'd like to rise to the challenge. It does, ordinarily, if you've got a fit squad and you've not got too many issues or too many off-field issues, it does sort the men out from the boys. I think to judge us over our wins and losses records over Easter would be harsh, given how many players we've got out and how many players are just coming back from injury. But you know, I think Easter's a good indicator of how tough your team is. But at this stage of the year, as I said a couple of weeks ago, you've got to keep bagging the wins. And in the old playoff system, you maybe would have afforded a little bit more room for the old performance being more important than the win. Now you've got to win. You've got to win your games, and you've got to get as many wins in the bag as you can before you start heading towards that round 23. We're way off round 23, and if we don't get what we want out of Easter, it's not going to be a big drama. But our mentality towards the other part of the season has shifted because of the new playoff system.